That's interesting.
What?
There's this. This is. Do you know what UI is?
I can't say I do.
UI stands for user interface.
Okay.
And so the Riverside mobile app has bad user interface because
What you want in an app, really, isn't it?
yeah, right. Like user interface is kind of what made iPhone famous because when you remember they came out with the iPhone and the iPad, they're like, you already know how to use it. So that's good user interface.
Okay.
But this app has a it doesn't look like a button, it just looks like a little icon on the screen, top left corner, it says a red circle and it says REC.
I've not got that, but I've got a little red circle and like a timer.
Yeah, which is at like 53 seconds.
Yeah.
Because when I see a red circle that says REC, I assume that means recording.
It's recording, yeah.
Actually, it just means press here if you'd like to record.
What does he mean? All that content is lost?
Yeah, well, that great self-tape chat is gone.
Oh well, that was our warm up. We were warming into it.
To summarise, it shouldn't matter if you don't have a good self-tape background.
That's
because
totally fine.
Casting directors should just pay attention to the acting that you're doing.
Yeah. As if you were in any film or piece of TV when you're also not acting in front of a blank wall. Yeah,
exactly. I actually had one. I had one recently for a commercial, and I think it was like 5 or 6 shots they asked for, and it could have been more of that. I sent 3 or 4, and I emailed later on that day just to say I hope that's useful for you, but. With commercial auditions, I find that sometimes they ask for a mime performance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there was like 3 shots that were including acting and 3 that were including me performing, pretty much like performing a mime and performing the weather. Like all the important stuff, I was just like, well, in the commercial, this just won't be the case.
Yeah, there'll be a rain machine and other people.
Yeah, and the actual thing you want me to assemble, which is difficult, I'll have in hand. So I don't know how I'm going to pretend to not know how to assemble this thing
if I don't have it.
Exactly. So I just sent the actual bits that were like actual acting, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do with the miming that you often get asked for in commercial. They basically ask you to act out the whole commercial from your room.
Yeah, I know that, and you know that they'll have like a vague idea of what they want, and then be like, "Oh yeah, I like what he's doing. We're not going to hire him, but we can definitely use that idea."
Yeah. It's exactly that. Because all that work you put into that stuff is going to turn out to be like, no, I don't like his smile. Okay, let's move on. So like, just give me the acting and I'll do that. Yeah.
Please make it easy for us. I had a tape through. This was a while ago now, during Play Goes Wrong time, for the upcoming and source of much controversy new Disney Snow White film with Rachel.
Oh yes,
Zegler, is that who's her name? So it's for that, and it was to be a bandit.
I think I auditioned for that.
Wow.
Tell me about
Listen, because well, tell you what, because it might have been the same. It might be the same sort of brief. So it was to be a bandit, and I was like, okay, great, cool, like fun, like one of the Wicked Queen's bandits or something. And they just sent 3 bits of music, like a minute long, like classical pieces, but quite up tempo. And they just said, we want to see kind of bandit activity to these pieces of music. You can make it quite physical comedy. We want to see any kind of tricks that you might have. It can be very slapstick, but just bandit behavior to music. You think?
What's bandit behavior?
So I kind of went for so I opened with myself eating a banana, unaware that I was being filmed, and then I realized I was being filmed, dropped the banana in haste, and kind of ran back and started sort of pantomiming lots of like. I had like a walking stick, and I did a bit of spinning that around and hitting myself in the face. I was very much in the world of Play Goes Wrong at the time, so I made it quite accident prone. And then after a bit of posturing and everything, I walked back towards camera and slipped on the banana skin. Chekhov's gun. You know, I planted that seed. We're going to see it again. We're going to see it again. I did not get the job. Yeah,
I bet they were
it's a
like,
lot.
he'd be really good in a play that goes wrong,
Yeah.
but he's not right for this.
And also, why is there a picture in the background? We can't hire him.
Yeah.
And I'd like cleared my kitchen. I'd like pulled the table away. I'd taken everything down. I find kind of when they say we need like a full, we need to see all of you. Who has that space? Who has that space?
I'm like, I've got like a big living room, and like I press record here, and then I just
like walking back.
And it's like, nothing below my kneecaps is in. Is that going to affect the audition?
I know what you do. And I kind of use like kitchen tiles to be like, okay, so you can't go any further forward than this kitchen tile because you will cut yourself. So I've like got like a surface area like this big to play with. So it's very contained bandit activity.
Yeah, so it's just like from shoulders to belly button, so you can just get like the middle of you in.
Yeah. I guess you could record it incrementally and be like, here's kind of knee to foot, and then
put it together like that game you used to do with
sailor, astronaut, gardener. Yeah, yeah, I like that. We should have done that. So, what was yours for? Not a bandit, I imagine. Although I would say that you are more of a bandit than I. So they missed a trick there.
I'm a real bandit.
You're a real wrong'un.
I think I don't know if I auditioned for it twice. One was for a Queen's Guard, I think.
Okay.
But the other one was for more of like a puppetry role.
Oh, nice.
Well, I think there was puppetry in the audition. But that being said, I don't know if I signed any NDAs for that audition, so who knows?
We're both like a red dot will just appear on the side of your face now, like, in the shape of Mickey.
Yeah. But it was definitely like a kind of like a dance call. So I don't even know if it was the same. It was a few years ago now, but maybe it was when I was in Play That Goes Wrong. I wouldn't make it that many. I'm sure it was Disney.
Yeah, that's kind of the only significant.
Yeah, dance calls just aren't for me, man. Every now and then I get invited to them because I've got like physical theatre on my CV.
Mm.
And so I had one for 101 Dalmatians, at Regent's Park last year.
Yeah.
And it becomes really apparent very quickly how incompetent I am when it comes to like actual choreography. Like I can keep to a beat if I'm just enjoying myself.
Vibing.
But when they're like, you're going to walk on here, but turn on 7. Next time, turn on 8, and then and I'm like, oh no. And I looked ridiculous. And it's like, there's another 30 minutes to go in this audition, and they're only making it more and more complex. And they're not going to cut me. They're just going to make me go through it.
They're going to make me do it, yeah. But there is also the and I've not done this myself, not because I'm like a particularly accomplished dancer, but I think I've always been a bit of a masochist and been like you will do it. But I know I've seen people be like, oh, you know what? Actually, this is beyond me. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, that's kind
of also an option to you, and like it's done very politely and in a very thank you for your time. I'm not going to be able to sort of execute what it is you're wanting. I'm gonna sort of out.
Yeah, that would save me some time.
So just a thing to consider next time. Or you can go down the old school route and force yourself through and be like, no, come on.
Yeah. I'm going to go and buy myself a hot chocolate when I finish this dance.
Yeah. And maybe a bit of cake. I'm a B, so I'm always quite early on as well in terms of when they start breaking it down into groups. And it's like, okay, so here's your
name.
first.
I thought that was like your note. I was like, do they call people in on their note?
No. Yeah, surnames. So I'm always very much at the beginning of that process.
I also get called in with the rest of the bees though. Just the black group.
So this has been AJ's podcast, everyone. Thank you so much. I thought we were making it political. God.
And I will say, I have at least one, but I think a couple of auditions I've been like, oh, this is diversity day. They're just making sure they get one of us in. Oh, that's not so bad. It means there's only like 10 people I'm competing against.
Well, yeah, there is that. Yeah, I can't say that it's been a thing I've picked up on, but there we are. I'm horribly Caucasian, so
Yeah, you've never been in a room full of Collins with like hand smoking.
I feel like should we touch on the hand smoking?
Yes, please tell us about it.
Okay.
Where did it come
So
from?
the hand smoking, the origins of the hand smoke, came from, and for our listeners, I should say that this is a thing that I'll tell you how it came about. So I was doing a production years ago with a director who, lovely man, and it was the show was Chess, and
Mhm.
Chess. The opening of Act Two, the song is called "One Night in Bangkok," and there's a lyric in it in sort of this weird pseudo 1980s rap. Tim Rice giving his best lyric play here, where it says, "Tea girls warm and sweet, Somerset up in the Somerset Maugham suite." And Chris went, "So who knows who Somerset Maugham is?" And kind of just was met with a room of blank-faced actors. He was like, "Well," and he was sort of sat halfway back in the stalls. Somerset Maugham was a writer, quite a famous travel writer, obviously the author of, and kind of listed several of his titles.
Mhm.
Living in, and working in the 30s, and kind of reeled off more information about him. Finished, paused, then just went. And I thought it was the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen. I was like, oh, well, I'm obviously going to take that into my personality and build a whole habit around it. So just started doing it after like dropping a particularly verbose bit of information, or kind of saying, oh, yeah, I caught the new at the National last night.
Mhm.
X was fantastic.
Oh, it's so funny. And because I saw Sam Parker had it, and then you told me on Play that actually that originated from you.
Oh yeah. He'll claim it. He'll claim it as his, but he is incorrect.
That's
That
so
is mine.
funny.
And I've
That's
sort of
so,
taken it into each contract. I did it during the week because we've been rehearsing at the London Welsh Centre, which is up
Yeah.
in King's Cross, and obviously it's been so hot recently, and the rehearsal room was a complete sweatbox. And we had like 4 industrial strength fans that did nothing, so we're all very red in the face. And I was like, well, I bet they haven't got this at the English National Ballet, which is like this beautiful new complex where I rehearsed earlier in the year. It's in Canning
Right.
Town. It's like all glass and metal. It's really smart. And someone said, "Oh, why? How do you know it?" Well, I rehearsed there for the Olivier's earlier in the year. They were like, what did you just do? What is that? I was like, you'll find out.
You'll get to know him.
You'll see, and you will take it, and thus it will grow. It'll kind of eventually find its way back to Chris, I hope, as well. Yeah,
It's so good, man.
so that's that.
So and at the moment, then have you finished rehearsing Book of Mormon?
Oh, absolutely not. No. So we are in week 3 of 4.
4 weeks. Is it quite a big show?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's sort of like week 3.5 for me, because me and 2 other of the new guys had like a pre-rehearsal week. So we spent 4 afternoons with the associate choreographer, which was great. Sort of learning some of the more substantial bits of choreo before starting.
But you like
2
dance
weeks ago.
captain?
I'm not. No. But that was kind of just for us to get a head start, because it's not a full recast. So it's the first time that I've gone into something where it's 20 people joining a cast that is already very much in existence.
Yeah.
So we've only just met the guys that are staying with the show, and women today, which was sort of like going back to, I guess, zero, because you're resetting completely. And
Yeah.
today was also our first day on stage, so our final 2 weeks are in the theatre, which is amazing, because you're kind of familiarizing yourself with that space. But mentally, I think this would be kind of the point, maybe 5 or 6 weeks into a rehearsal process, like getting into tech.
Yeah, so you've done
And
2 weeks in a rehearsal room, and then now
Yeah.
you're teching, essentially.
Dry teching and sort of still finessing, but
Yeah.
pretty much going through and doing it as at the in situ. And mentally you'd be like, oh well, we're about to open, and we're ready, and we're sort of adding the final bits and doing it in costume, and we've been doing it for over a month, but we haven't. We've been doing it for 2 weeks, and we're already in the space.
Yeah,
And
you
although
don't
we
know anything
still
after 2 weeks.
absolutely not, absolutely not. So even though we have 2 weeks more to go, the fact that we're in the theatre and working with people who really know the show, you're like, oh my god, it's a lot. Like it's a lot.
Yeah,
It's great fun and it's so exciting, but it's quite overwhelming as well. And sort of you have each department noting you as we go because we're still in rehearsal, but we're on
yeah.
stage
And they're
and we
like,
have
yeah,
stage
that's lovely
management.
what you're doing, but don't stand there.
Yeah, yeah. And on this
Yeah,
bit, can you just remember to yeah, I will. But I'm also trying to stand on 8 and not get knocked out of by this thing coming on. And yeah, and what's the intent? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I find
This
that
kind of
I find that very difficult about joining. No, I don't find it very difficult, but it's one of the problems with joining an established production is that your creativity is somewhat capped because it's a set piece already,
yeah.
and you'll get like a good director who will let you explore a bit, but at some point they'll go, and is there a version where? And you're like, yeah, I'll do.
That's fine. Yeah.
Hey, tell me about your Book of Mormon audition.
Well, so I'd auditioned for the show like maybe 4 or 5 times in the past.
Jesus.
Yeah, and never gotten past the first round. So I think eventually it was just like I'm not meant to be in that. I kind of know what it is that they're wanting from their male cast members in particular. Like it's this very all American, clean cut, preppy sort of aesthetic which they're after. And I just thought maybe
Yes.
that's just not what I'm capable of providing. Fine. So when it came through again this year, I was sort of like, oh yeah, okay, I'll go in, I'll sort of do what I do, and I don't think it'll be of any use to them. But it was the first time that I was in for a particular role as opposed to a general. Let's bring him in and see what he can do. And it kind of just started happening. Was very, I don't want to say easy, but it didn't feel too. At first, it didn't feel too grueling. It was just like you have a recall. You're in again next week. There's nothing new to learn. They just want to work with you on the stuff. So I initially went in. They gave me material. I was in the room like a minute, 2 minutes. Did a brief cut of a song, 2 scenes. Thank you very much. Went in again the next week. We kind of worked on it a bit, and then I got my final through. I was like, oh wow, this is
So that's 4 rounds so far.
So that was this was coming up to 3, and the final would be split across a dance call in the morning and then the material again in the afternoon. And each time it was nothing new, it was just the same stuff. And what was great with the dance part was that there was perhaps maybe a 2-week gap in between second round and final, I think. Was they sent a Dropbox link with the associate choreographer teaching the combinations. Which has happened once before as well. It's brilliant because it kind of just takes the pressure off of the memory test that dance auditions can be.
Yes.
So then it happened. Did my final. I very rarely leave something like that thinking I couldn't have done anything else in that, and I did. And I was like, oh, this is a really nice feeling just to leave and be like,
that's liberating, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah. That's the kind of the best version of me that they got within that context. And they said, lovely, thank you so much. You'll hear either way by the end of next week. And I thought, great. So I can either celebrate or put it to bed. Next week came and went, and I did not hear. So naturally began to spiral because that's what I do. Then about midweek through the second week, I saw my agent call and sort of like just dove across the room with the phone. And she said, yeah, it's not the news you want to hear. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's not gone my way. And she went, no, you're still in the mix. They just need to bring you in again because the Americans are coming over. So the show's just celebrated its 10-year anniversary in London. So they were all over here for that anyway. And they were like, hey, let's make a trip out of it and see the finalists for the new Westend recast. And that was another 4 weeks away, 3 weeks away.
Oh, you're joking.
Yeah. So that was... I think it's like mentally I was so ready to be like, great, I got the job, or that's a shame, what's next? So it was like another 3 weeks of just mental you know.
What's going through your head for those 3 weeks?
So rather unhelpful. Was it unhelpful? Yeah, it was unhelpful. I think I knew who it was that I was sort of up against. In terms of it was between me and one other person, and I only realised that because of how they had worked that final audition day.
Just how they tripped you up when you left the room.
Yeah, he like threw marbles down the stairs, and I was like, ah! He was very sweet, actually. But he's quite a well-established musical theatre performer with a big following. And I was like, okay, but we're very, very different, and in terms of look as well. So it wasn't even as if I was up against a 5'11" brown-haired guy that looked like me. It was someone just completely different. I was like, this is anyone's game from what I know.
Yeah.
Like, they're either going to go him or him. What was lovely, though, was that when we finally got to the final week, they brought me in the day before the final, and it was just the London team. And they were like, this isn't a casting, it's just like a recap session for you, because, it's been 3 weeks. So here's what you need to do. Just remember this, and this. And we kind of just topped and tailed. And then the next day it was the big one. And it was the biggest panel I've ever been in front of. It was like a room full of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was in the studio of the Dominion, so like this kind of big
old space.
Big old space. And it was like wall to wall.
Yeah. Wow.
Do
you want to hear about my Book of Mormon audition?
Please, I would love to.
So, I was in third year at drama school.
Yeah.
And I just signed with my agent, and I got this email through being like, you've got an audition for the Book of Mormon. We'd love you to find a couple of pieces that show off your range. And I was like, that's interesting because I don't sing. For instance, when we had a singing coach come in third year, and basically we all did a piece, and they kind of like rated us essentially. There was 2 options. It was like, can they sing? Yes, and something like,
should they sing?
Well, it was basically my answer. They ticked, so it said no with training.
Okay.
So
it's not like a full write-off.
Well, it sounds like he's not even good enough to not be able to do it. We were all really confused. We were like, how bad was he? So anyway, and they said, you want to show off your range? And I called up my agent and I was like, look, I don't think I have any range to show off. What should we do? And they're like, look, we'll pull you out of it. We don't want you to embarrass yourself. Don't worry about it. And the next week, same casting director sent me an audition for Lion King and Book of Mormon again, but this time with the script, and said, can you prepare these sides for the Doctor? So I'm going,
and he sings, that's a high bit of singing, but carry on.
But I'm thinking, they're just trying to cast me in something. Because bear in mind, I'm still at drama school. I don't know how this works. I'm like, they're just trying to give me a job. I just need to turn up and just do my thing, right? And I get there. I've been learning that song, that Avicii song. Wake me up when it's all over. And I've been learning it on some sheet music website. I spent like £3 on. I didn't know what I was doing. And like had like press on my laptop and it'll play it. And I'm like, and then I got there, about 5 of them on the panel. And I come in the room and I go to shake everyone's hand. And by about the second person, it became very clear they didn't want to shake my hand. But I was like, I have to finish this. So I shook their hands, I stood back, and I gave the guy my sheet music. And obviously the way I present my sheet music wasn't right, because it's supposed to be like stuck together or something. I just like, give us a piece of paper. Like, okay, so I can do with this. And then he starts playing the song. And it's like double time to what I'd rehearsed. So I was just like, wake me up when it's all over. When I had no idea what to do. And then my voice is tight because I'm nervous and it's too fast.
And you're pushing through.
And then they're just like, I finished my bit, and they were like, okay, thank you. So I was like,
yeah, cheers.
All right, thank you. Really
I'll see
nice
you in
an
hour for the Lion King. Oh,
And then I left the room, right? And just as I left, I thought to myself, do you know what? I didn't even get to do my scenes. Let me go back in there. Let me show them I can act. And I put
well
my hand
done.
on the door handle. And as I went to turn the door handle, I just heard them all burst out laughing. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. They kept a
Yeah,
straight
I'm
face
good.
while I was there. And I just left. And the thing is, I had no hard feelings. I was like, that audition was awful. Just thank you for not laughing in my face while I did it.
So how would you feel about taking? Well, how would you feel about being called in for something in which you had to sing now?
Uh,
What did you learn, EJ? What did you learn from that experience?
well, I have my Lion King audition next, and
Oh
the
yeah.
two guys on the panel. One was playing piano, and one was like directing me. They called me over to be like, "Let me teach you what you need to know next time you
Oh,
go
that's
in."
very sweet. Yeah, yeah.
It was very sweet. Although it was one of those auditions where you could hear the people before you singing from outside, and so
When?
there was some real powerhouses going in before me. That was nice of them, but it was useless because I'm not gonna sing. I've since had a couple of singing auditions. One for this thing at the Almeida. It was like folk singing, but again, like I just, I could sing through like the ensemble songs in Warhorse,
Yeah,
but if you're doing like a small group of people or solos, just I'm not your guy.
yeah. Fair enough.
I'm
Fair enough.
not your guy. I'm not that guy.
Well, I don't know. I think maybe they missed a trick.
No, they dodged a bullet. Is what they did.
God, it's so funny. It's like there's so much etiquette like wrapped up in that had it not been communicated to you in the way that it was like drilled into us on my course, yeah. Like, why would you know that the correct way to tape sheet music, and that
Yeah,
you're able sometimes to be like, oh, I'm sorry, actually, that I give you the wrong tempo. Can we start again? Like,
yeah. I had no idea
but
what I
you were
was
like,
doing. Yeah,
you wouldn't know. Yeah.
no. Again, another thing that was failed at drama school. But
And they're nerve wracking. They are nerve wracking things. And so, on the rare occasion that I've gone in for like a play, and there's that kind of preamble and take a seat. What have you been up to? Let's talk. It's so arresting because you think, oh wow, this is nice, and
mm,
so much. So often on the other side of things, it's as soon as you're in. So what have you brought? Lovely, thank you, and then thank you,
yeah,
and you're gone.
I really don't envy, especially dancers who are just like all of you dance at the same time, and then we're going to cut some of you. See you later. Like I think that's wild.
Yeah, it's character development.
Yeah. Do you think there's more competition in dance? So do you think the standard is high, so they have to bring more people in, or do they just like to bring lots of people in? Like with actors, I guess partly it's because the look is such a big part of it, but like you don't bring in hundreds of people to audition for
Yeah,
one
of
role.
course. Well, I guess kind of typically a big old musical is going to be a minimum cast of what 30 people,
Yeah. Okay.
and that's sometimes not even including like an offstage team of swings and covers and things. So just the pool of people is going to have to be bigger because of the
Yeah.
positions you need filling. I don't know whether it's a case of like the standard being higher amongst dancers and musical theatre performers than it is with acting. Because they're both saturated markets, but I feel like there's a necessity within musicals, especially like big budget ones, wherein they just need to see more people because there are more positions to fill. Whereas if you're putting on, a four-hander, of course you're not going to see hundreds of actors. That would be counterintuitive.
Yeah, of course. And also like especially if you're ensemble dancer, you need to be uniform. So actually there's not as much room for character.
Yeah.
So having people just all dance at the same time and just bringing loads of people in makes more sense.
Yeah.
Whereas
I
with
was
an
thinking about
actor,
that as well. And like, sorry to cut you off, but
yeah, don't ever do
like
that
thinking,
again.
this is my podcast.
End call now.
Yeah.
You've
Thank you for
been
calling me.
great.
All right, then, bye. I was thinking about, again, because like these big shows that I've been playing for several years, if not decades, they're not necessarily looking for reinventions. So the brief is going to be so much more set than it would
Yeah.
be for a new production of Measure for Measure or whatever, which will also not narrow down who you're considering, but actually maybe it will.
Yeah.
But again, it becomes a very different brief and skill set, because you're not going in there to be like, well, here's what I would do with it. You're sort of trying to find a way to bring yourself into that vision and into that product, because they are products,
Yeah.
and how best you could support and continue it. Which isn't to say that it's not, there's not value in that, because it's still a performance skill, but it's not like we're going to create this from the ground up and there'll be discussion and table reads and we're going to play. It's very much we need this. Can you fit into it?
Yeah. How
And I think
do you?
from sorry,
I was gonna say, how do you feel? Because now in Book of Mormon you've got a role, right?
yeah.
So how do you feel about like ensemble life fit into the bill? Are you still? Would you find fulfillment in that now?
That's me in 6 months.
Yeah.
I think like maybe in the past I would have not scoffed at it as such, but maybe looked on it as oh god, how do I articulate this without sounding like an absolute prat? But perhaps looking at something original with more as being worthier and more worth my while, and maybe using that as a bit of a buffer to not even getting in the room for like these big established shows, thinking, well, I don't want to be the nth cast of whatever anyway. And now that I'm kind of maybe aging into myself a bit more and becoming more useful to those set shows, I'm beginning to realize that actually it's an incredible skill to be malleable enough as a performer to go, okay, right, I see what it is you need. I will do my best to accommodate that.
That's
I think
interesting.
it's like a different hat. Yeah, and it feels I feel very privileged to like be allowed into this institution of an entertainment, and that someone's been like, yeah, we trust you enough to have a crack at this.
Yeah, but with a named, are you a named role?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you still, although there's a bill to fit, you still get your freedom of this is Colin's role,
Yeah.
and it's not like there are 10 of you that need to do the same thing at the same time.
Well, yes and no. I've sort of got an interesting pride with this one, because although I'm a named role, I am also doing all of the Mormon ensemble material. So at the beginning, I feature as somebody else. So I am still very much part of that
Right.
battalion of white-shirted, black-tied guys, and have these nice features where I can then sort of come out and do my thing. But otherwise, I'm there in the trenches with everyone else, kind of, trying to deliver choreography. So it's an interesting hybrid.
Yeah, it's kind of fun though, being in the trenches with the ensemble. And
Completely.
There's a lot more room for like finding out your like, I don't know, it's like your little like mischief or whatever it is you get up to that helps you guys do it for a year.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah, and I still really enjoy singing and dancing, so I'm more than happy to be like, yeah, put me into that. Great, let's do that.
Yeah, I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing you in Book of Mormon, because I haven't seen it yet. But when you said you'd got it, I was like, of course, Colin. As far as I'm concerned, Colin's right for that job.
Yeah, which is very nice of you to say. And several people did say that, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe. Given
maybe
that
5
for so
years
long,
ago.
Well, for so long, I was like, that's just not going to be a thing that I'm ever going to be part of. Which maybe helped going into it because I wasn't, I had no skin in the game. It was like, oh yeah, okay, here we go
Yeah.
again. Oh, okay, right, you're interested.
Yeah, I've got a job like that before. It was. I thought the director didn't like me. The auditions were so
Classic.
quick, and like so quick, and also I didn't think he was paying that much attention to me, and apparently that wasn't the case.
There you go.
But yeah, it was a nice position to be in, to be like, well, I haven't got it, but whatever. Did my thing and left.
Yeah. And
Do
then
you have like a? So how old are you now?
I'm 32 now.
Oh, I thought you were much older than me. I'm 31.
All right.
I'm only 31. So do you have like a? What do you want to do? Do musical theatre performers have a shelf life?
Yeah, I guess so. But if you like look at the canon of musical theatre, it's just a case of aging into what feasibly you are going to be playing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, interestingly, there's a swing who is, I think, 36, 30, also one who's 38 in the company. I think 38. It's definitely a 36-year-old who, covers several of those guys, and is able to physically present as a 19-year-old, and is therefore, in the show. So I think if visibly and aesthetically you can still deliver that, and you're able to do it physically, in terms of you can deliver the choreography and whatnot, then you will still be used as such.
I'm thinking generally though, like big dance numbers are a young man's game, right?
Yeah, and I found that like fellow, like a lot of my contemporaries, if I'm going to use that word, but I will, who have done a lot of musical theatre since graduating and have gone from big show to big show to big show, often in ensembles covering people. There is less of an appeal, perhaps, to carry on doing that. So the prospect of getting securing a track on a show that isn't included in those big numbers is fine by them, and they're more than happy to be like, you know what, I've done my time, I'll take a back seat and I'll play the slightly older parts and not have to be there, step whacking with everyone else. And or they'll kind of be like, I want to concentrate more on roles now, move away from that. And because I've done that, and because I've only done that very sporadically and never at this level, certainly for this length of time, I'm kind of thinking, no, I think I'm quite happy to sort of inhabit this arena for a while longer, if I'm able to, if I'm lucky enough to carry on doing that, then yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm considering this job you've got to be partly because it's a named role, to be different than just number 10 dancer in that scene.
Yeah, I hope so, but we'll see. In terms of shelf life, I think there is a capacity for longevity there that isn't necessarily the case with if you were a ballet dancer, for example, when the intensity of that lifestyle just means that after a certain point you're physically not going to be able to carry on doing that. But then even in like the canon of classical ballet, there is sort of scope to then become character artists who play like the kings and the queens and the evil fairies, who kind of just come on and do a bit of pointing and whatnot, but have had these very illustrious careers playing all the great roles, but have sort of aged into this bracket now, or become, is it repetiteurs? Is that the word? Who will then kind of teach the canon themselves?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
What would you do if you weren't acting?
What would I do if I wasn't acting? Maybe something like graphic design, something to do with design. I think illustration.
Oh,
I
because
hope.
you draw, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd like to be an illustrator.
Well, for what?
Can I say that? What?
Let's say, right,
Yeah.
money's not an option. You get
Mhm.
paid the amount that you want to get paid. But you get to just choose what you spend 40 hours a week doing. What would you do?
Yeah, I think illustration.
Mm,
Yeah, something like do you know the artist Chris Riddell?
no.
You probably would recognize his stuff. Like it's very, very idiosyncratic style, and he's children's laureate as well. I'm not entirely sure what that involves, but I know that he is sort of at the forefront of lots of art focused programs and stuff for kids. But he's a fantastic illustrator. He and so I follow him on Instagram, but he used to illustrate a series of like teen fiction fantasy novels that I read as a kid called Beyond the Dark Woods, Beyond the Deep Woods. And like this brilliant, really, really sinister black and white pen and ink drawings, like kind of a bit Tim Burton-y, but really, really characterful and incredibly detailed, very fine lines. And whenever I see his stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that is just so evocative and so characterful. But whenever I see his stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to sit down and draw now. Um,
Mm,
it's like that's kind of a world that I would like to also have a go at creating. And he kind of illustrates a lot for like newspapers, and will do like political cartoons as well as illustrating lots of kids' books. So I guess sort of that thing, yeah. And
I was
like
about,
if they did a re-release of or he illustrated his own version of Alice in Wonderland, possibly for some significant anniversary of the book. I don't know, but it was like this beautiful, beautifully presented, like, leather-bound new version of the story with
yeah.
his take on that, and that's kind of still firmly planted in everyone's consciousness. It was like, oh, so how is he going to realize that? And that
Yeah,
like
that's nice.
that's really exciting, to be that must be a very exciting thing to be presented with a brief. Like, yeah, we'd like you to illustrate a new version of Grimm's fairy tales. Oh, great! How can I?
Yeah, so it would definitely be because that's what you've described as like quite a it's quite like deep artistic process.
Hmm.
So then, how do you feel then? Do you know what Mid Journey is?
No, tell me about that.
How do you feel? Well, it's AI generated art.
Right.
It's the biggest name in AI generated art. Have you seen what they get up to with that stuff?
I think I've seen examples of it because I'm also quite into like set design. So
Hmm.
maybe I'd also consider that. And I follow some account on Instagram where it's an artist who will kind of upload, here's a production of Twelfth Night designed using AI, and it's these incredibly detailed,
Yeah,
vibrant images, but they're kind of so hyper real that you're
yeah,
like, this hasn't been made by anyone. This is so artificial, but undeniably very beautiful, and possibly too too detailed and so kind of outlandish that it couldn't possibly be realized physically. Like it's
hmm
only ever going to be an upload on this guy's Instagram who dabbles in AI.
Well, unless it's in the metaverse one day, and that's how we create the set.
So what's the metaverse?
It's like Facebook's answer to virtual reality.
Right.
So I could see that being a world where you create your set in AI, and actors come and perform on it, or just in real life. To be honest, like there are some really extravagant sets you can get if you have the budget for them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you feel? I guess at the moment you're not illustrating for financial reasons, but
Yeah.
do you feel any conflict with artificial intelligence as an artist, or are you indifferent to it, or do you think it would be useful?
I've had a feeling you asked me about this. I don't know why I just did.
Oh, I'm obsessed by it.
Yeah. I think it's a bit sinister. I do.
Mm.
Yeah.
Why?
I, I think the. Why do I think it's sinister? I think it's such I think it's a really callous way of looking at the creative process, and I think I think it undermines the effort and the thought and also the emotion that I think a creative person brings to their process. That will take longer and will not be generated with the speed or efficiency that a program could do, but is I just inherently for me has more meaning and substance because it's come from a human source. I don't know that there's a disregard for our capability as humans to be like, well, that can just do it. You're like,
Mm.
yeah, it can, but will it mean anything? Is
It,
it just it's a means to an end? You know, it's so functional, and I don't think design, the arts, necessarily should be.
yeah, because a lot of the art that you enjoy, partly what you enjoy about it is the story behind it.
Yeah,
And so you want to know that the process was there in order to enjoy it. But what if you didn't know the process was there? Or what if the story you were told about the process wasn't true and you later found out that to be the case? Would it make you feel differently about the art that you've been enjoying?
not if I knew it was still born of like human effort and work and labor and hours spent at a canvas or at a typewriter or in a
Mm-hmm.
dance studio.
Here's a
I think
question
maybe
then.
the kind of the route there is um not irrelevant, but is what's the word I'm looking for? By and by, the fact that it's come from a person and yeah, effort, labor, thought, care has gone into it is the important thing. And hey, if there's a fascinating story about how it came to be, even better. But I would I think I'm just quite old fashioned though in my general sentiments anyway. I would always prefer that than something generated by AI.
Do you like photography?
Yeah, it wouldn't be kind of top of my list of the visual arts that I would,
Do you
opt
appreciate
in
it as
for.
an art form?
Yeah, completely. Yeah,
Do you think that oil painters said the same thing about about the camera?
I think they probably did. Yeah,
Mm.
but
That's what I think. But
but
I
is
think
there
there's a
a
difference.
yeah, I would say so. I would say so.
But I don't know if that difference is a technicality. Because you might spend 4 months creating a beautiful oil painting, or you might just take a picture of the same landscape and they don't look too dissimilar. But now we understand that there's a lot that goes into creating a beautiful photograph.
Mm.
But you do just at some level just press click.
Yeah, but I think there's also something to be said for finding that location, figuring out the best quality of light for that location, the atmosphere that you're wanting to create with the picture that you're intending to take there, or the technical skill required to be like that's an image that is worthy of capture. I'm gonna get it, and being able to achieve that in the moment. And maybe we kind of go to photography and painting with different, not agendas, but with different. I'm not sure that I would go to like a painting exhibit wanting the same thing that I would go to a photography exhibit from.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So do you know, because you don't know much about AI art, I've gathered, other than this set designer who shows, but do you know the process that goes into generating it?
This is like a very remedial guess. I would say that I would assume that's kind of like enter kind of the relevant words and saying, I want you to make me include
Yeah.
these colors, these textures, these dimensions. Go. I
Yeah,
could be wrong. That's what I assume.
it kind of is. It's really interesting. Like when you first try it, you'll be like, make the Pope dressed in a clown outfit, and then it will come up and you'll be like, oh my God, wow. And then after a few tries, you'll be like, I actually have no control over what it's really coming up with, because when I want to get specific, I can't do it.
Yeah.
But then the experts at doing this, they'll be giving you what kind of lens camera to see it through and what kind of pixel quality they want, and then like the specific style of art, and it becomes a very detailed prompt. But that being said, there are still 1,000 ways to realize their prompt. So it's like a collaboration. It's like you're directing a piece rather than painting it yourself.
Sure. And hey, look, undeniably, the skill involved in creating that, like the people that program that, is also incredibly impressive and is no less worthwhile than the skill that goes into painting a beautiful picture on a canvas. But maybe I would feel differently about it has it not been perceived and as being perceived as like a threat to the creative arts, because I feel like that is also being, that dialogue is happening, especially with it's been included in sort of talk around the writers' strike in LA and the possibility of entire screenplays being written by AI. And if we're able to do that, then
that's my next question is like, where's the line
yeah,
on what's a piece of art and what's a piece of computer program, and does it matter for the viewer? But like we said, the story of the process can be part of our enjoyment of the art, how we receive it. But if somebody tells me a good story, it's just a good story, and I don't know where the line is. It's like you're still doing maths on a calculator, but you're not actually doing the calculation.
yeah.
And maths is something more objective, so maybe that's okay. But I don't know where the line is.
Nor do
I
I.
use AI every day, and I've got a Chat GPT on my phone, and so I just speak to it on the app, and I speak to it like it works for me as a human. And so I'm not like an expert at giving it the prompt. I'll be like, okay, so I'm doing this thing today, and these are my thoughts about it. I want you to work as a expert in this field and give me some creative ideas that I can run with to do this and that. And then it comes up with some ideas. I'm like, yeah, great. I'm going to springboard off these. And it's really useful. But I also find that sometimes I don't spend the time in my own thoughts to find the idea, and I feel like I haven't done the creative part, so I somehow feel unsatisfied.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And
it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's really useful, but there's something about it that sometimes just doesn't feel like I got to do the enjoyable part.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was another person, I'd quite enjoy talking about the ideas.
And the satisfaction is one of the the greatest benefits of embarking on any creative process.
Yeah, because most of them don't pay you, so it's not for the money.
Yeah, and not necessarily the final product, the kind of bowing in front of a clapping audience. It's the participation in
Yeah,
something that we find obviously very fulfilling as creative people. I don't know why you'd want to shortchange yourself of that. I understand why a studio executive would want to, because they're going to save a hell of a lot of money. But yeah, don't deny yourself that satisfaction. And I think that's why I consider it a bit sinister, because, is there a world? I imagine there is. I mean, we're living in it now, where the disregard for the worth of the artist, for the creative person, is even uh, more pronounced by the big bosses, when they're able
yeah.
to be like, we actually don't need you, we're good, thank you. I don't care if it's satisfying you, if it's like scratching an itch that you've had all your life. I can do it for half the price, if any cost at all, using this piece of programming.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's if it replaces the process for the artist, but it's only then the artist that suffers, because like if you went downstairs tonight and put Netflix on and it
Yeah,
came up with a program that was tuned into your life and your life experiences and your wants and needs and your fears, you'd probably find it quite engaging.
yeah.
And so the viewer, I don't think en masse will care, and they might get some of the best art they've ever seen, and the artists will be there looking for their creative outlet, which I think they'll still find. Like, theatre still exists, right? We've had cinema for years, but we still go
It
to the
does.
theatre.
Yeah. And I don't think that there's going to be this kind of huge revolution, and suddenly there'll be no more playwrights and no more X, Y, and Zs. I just think it's an
I think you'll be
encroaching
surprised at how
shadow.
quickly it moves.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going incredibly quickly, and most people don't. Most people haven't spent any time looking at it yet. But when it and it's not far off understanding people at a very deep level, even if it doesn't understand what it's understanding,
Mm.
that it will, the way it will change just the way we consume anything. Like, it's the same as like the calculate thing and your phone thing. It's like, how many things do you actually look up anymore? You just Google quickly and that's your answer. And
Yeah.
when that's an AI and it's thinking with you and for you, I think everything about how we live will change very, very quickly. For instance, like every automatable job will be gone before you know it. And then
Yeah.
I don't know what people do with their spare time, because there won't be as much need for as many people to work. I think the world will change much quicker than we realise.
And I actually think that is the bigger threat than the arts, or the artist becoming redundant. I think it's like the blue collar worker,
Yeah,
that kind of labor market just becoming increasingly small, because they're just not needed. I think that's quite
yeah,
a frightening prospect. Yeah,
it is. I don't know what we
because
do, but
not
it's.
everyone can be an artist, and not everyone can be an AI developer. But we're lucky enough to be. Yeah, I don't know. Well, and to go back on a point you said about going downstairs and turning on Netflix and seeing something that has been what's the word, that has been curated just for me, and
Yeah,
how engaging I would find that. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think I would up until a certain point. But I think ultimately, if you're just consuming material and content that the algorithm is saying you like this, yeah, you probably will, but you're not gonna grow. You're not gonna learn, which surely also is the purpose of a lot of
but
art.
why not? Why can't it be like, oh, Colin thinks these things, and so today we're going to give him something that completely challenges that idea. I think
That
he could
seems
do
like
it.
I think it probably could. That seems like quite a counterintuitive mode of thought for AI. In that, kind of on a general Facebook feed, we're going to be fed things that we want to see, which is kind of how the
Mm.
not to get kind of too QAnon about it, but how sort of the status quo is kept. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to be presented with alternative points of view on my. I'm not going to get like Britain First and UKIP,
Yeah, not unless you
you know,
start actually
adjacent
watching, searching
material.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, which
yeah.
is why the culture war is so pronounced. It's because we're
Mm.
so reliant on our social media for everything
Mm.
that discourse has just completely vanished because all we see is what we want to see. So it's just people shouting at each other in comment sections now.
Yeah, I know. I've got a couple of comments sections on my Instagram at the moment. Like, it was just like a warhorse post, one of them, and it's just turned into these people arguing about animal cruelty, and both of them are experts for and against. Like, well, both of them are experts against animal cruelty, but coming from different sides, and they've just been at it for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm just like, move on with your lives.
They're like, guys, they're puppets. They're fine. They won't hurt.
No, they're puppets.
But that's how good I am.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So before we go, we haven't touched on your OCD diagnosis. Tell me about it.
Okay. I will. So I'll kind of like give you like a quick fire breakdown of my experience of living with OCD.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a development, a personal development of mine over the past few years. 2019, right before the pandemic, I suffered some bereavement in the family, and I responded to it in quite an unusual way. In that I was working at the time. I was on a job in New York. I was panto, and I was stood in the wings one night watching to the actors waiting to go on, and became hyper fixated on my blinking. This came out of nowhere. It was just this awareness of the act of, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit odd. I guess it'll just sort of move through my consciousness and leave eventually. And it didn't. And when I woke up the next day and that was still there, it was the beginning of what's been this very challenging journey. And initially, when that awareness and that kind of that manual blinking would not leave, I legitimately thought that I was going insane.
Mm.
And the subsequent anxiety of that was really quite frightening. And it's the kind of the first real brush that I've had in terms of my mental health is not where I need it to be. Obviously, it was triggered by this, a very upsetting life event. But the more I failed to control it, the more frightening it became. And I was sort of doing 2 shows a day at Panto and like worrying myself sick, and like legitimately thought, oh, I'm going to be institutionalized. I cannot live like this. I don't see how to move forward with it. It was really it was horrible. It was a horrible time. And then the pandemic happened, and we went into lockdown, and it sort of just gradually went away by itself. And it was almost as if, and I've said this before to people when I've been speaking about it, as if like my brain was saying to me, this huge, horrendous thing is happening. I can't possibly compete with both that and this, so we're not going to think about that anymore. And I kind of lived throughout most of 2020 with it not being an issue, and then it got to the end of 2020 and we sort of hit the year anniversary of the deaths, and it began again. And by that point we were in lockdown 3, and it was bleak. Like, it was really hard, to the point where I was struggling to get out of bed of a morning because the prospect of having to open my eyes and spend 12 plus hours manually blinking and sort of really interrogating, have you blinked enough? Like, when is the next one going to be? How am I going to know whether it's, and this really acute fear of, this is never going to go away. Like, I'm going to have to live with this forever, and I don't know whether I can do that. And I never have been, fortunately, suicidal. But there was this, I can't see a way of moving forward with this. Not to the point where I was going to do something drastic, but I just didn't know how to contend with it. So I started therapy, and spent a lot of 2021 prior to the world beginning again and starting when play goes wrong, doing a lot of work with my therapist on that, and basically becoming familiar with this thing called sensory motor OCD, which is actually really common and a lot of people experience, and probably everyone has experienced in some little way across the course of their life, which is just a susceptibility to getting hyperfixated on automatic bodily processes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of changed themes a lot. So quite commonly it can sort of bounce between, this is just for me, my breathing, my swallowing, sometimes my heartbeat. And there are sort of many different things that can fall under that umbrella, but it's a subtype of OCD basically. So yeah, it's kind of just been this journey of understanding that and trying to get comfortable with it, which is the hardest thing in the world to do. But it's one of the ways that you learn to live with it is the acceptance of, and I've had a lot of therapy. My understanding of it has changed a lot since that initial experience. It's ebbed and flowed, and it's peaked and troughed a lot over the past few years. But it's it's become a fixture of my life. And there will be periods where it's not an issue, and I can look at it incredibly objectively and think, oh yeah, this is a thing that my head does sometimes. And then there'll be times when I'm on the other side and I'm living in it, which is, now is one of those times. And it can feel pretty insurmountable and quite grueling to live with.
Does it feel like, the word you're using is like to live with? Because it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not the same as living with another personality or character, but it's like you're living with an awareness that you can't shake.
Yeah. So I think I'm trying to begin to do in the way that I'm looking at it for a long time, and still, it's always been this very binary thing. So it's been, if it's not happening, then I'm well, and if it's happening, then I'm unwell, and things are terrible. And a lot of the work that I've been doing in CBT is kind of trying to make that a much more like liminal thing. And actually, it can be happening and everything can be fine, because everything actually is fine. There is no immediate threat. There is a part of my, prehistoric brain that is saying something is really wrong and you're going to have to do something about it, when in fact it's not. And there's nothing inherently wrong with this hyper awareness. And that can sometimes be a lot easier to grapple with than other times. But yeah, that's kind of been a big development this year. Is just trying to live in that mid ground of, oh no, it can be here and we can be okay. And sometimes that's really that's achievable, and I can potter along and do my thing and live. And other times it just takes a bit more work. Yeah.
I can understand it on, like you said, it's common, like on an undiagnosable bottom of the spectrum level, where I'm thinking of it more, and it's not even something I don't think I have it anymore, but when I was younger, I'd like touch something with one hand and I just need to touch it with the other hand. But there's no rational reason for that. It just feels like I need to. I'm aware that I've touched it with this hand. But obviously what you're describing is much more consuming. And so it's okay. So you learn to live with it. And then for other people, does this stuff ever go away randomly, or like?
I mean, in my experience of it is that it does. Yeah, it peaks and troughs. So again, what I've been trying to do this year in particular, because it was pretty rough at the start of the year. I should also add that I this year went on to antidepressants to help with it, and they really have helped as well. And that's kind of been a thing that was quite a contentious issue between me and a previous therapist who really wasn't pro medication. So I had a bit of internal, I guess, prejudice against them, and I was like, nope,
Yeah.
don't need it, don't want to do it, don't want to self medicate. And then ultimately it was like, I don't know why I'm not giving myself the chance to get even a bit better with the help of SSRIs. And I'm so pleased that I have, and it was definitely the right thing for me to do. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten the question, EJ. What did you ask me?
Does it like? Is it possible that it just goes away? And you say
yes,
yours ebbs and flows.
Yeah. So what I've been trying to identify is just what I've not been doing. And it sounds a bit tropey, but in regards to my self-care, because that I find does really quite affect it. So throughout this past year, I've been like, okay, did you eat 3 meals today? How much sleep did you get last night? How much water have you drank? How much rest are you prioritizing for yourself? Did you exercise? And I think when I've looked back in the past, and I've been like living it in this much more binary way, my well periods, I was like, what were you doing? What was different there that meant it wasn't so apparent and you weren't so susceptible to it? And usually it would be around periods of more certainty, although that's a different thing. But when I'd just done a bit more work on myself, and pretty like basic stuff, that I got 8 hours sleep, that I made sure I ate, that I didn't spend the night drinking or get in too late, all that sort of thing. And a lot of the time I'd be like, God, is it that obvious? And like, yeah, I think a lot of the time it is.
Especially sleep.
Yeah. And it's not the answer. It's not going to cure me, but nothing ever will cure me. I'm learning to live with the prospect of this just being a thing that my brain does. But it certainly helps. So like today I finished rehearsal and I've felt pretty grim mentally, even though I'm kind of presenting as not and in rehearsal. And I wanted more than anything just to come home. And I was like, no, you should go to the gym. Like, go to the gym. Take this thing with you to the gym. And I did. And it was hard, but I did it. And the fact that I've then been able to kind of get to this point in the day when I've like gone through this pretty hard day, both because of the OCD and just because of what I was doing, and been like, well, you did all that. You did all that with this kind of weight. And well done. Really good. So it's kind of rewarding myself with the knowledge that I just got on with it and I pushed through. And I found
that's the
is
part you're in control of.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. And that's kind of always been rule one in kind of my manifesto against it, is you cannot stop doing the things that you want to do. So you never would I be like, I can't come into work. I've never like called in sick because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I might have to one day, but I've always been like, get yourself out of the house and go. And it's punctuated like all these big periods of my life, and especially like my professional life. So I kind of look back at periods of play goes wrong, when the blinking was really an issue and was really bothering me. But I was like, go to work. Like, you have to do the show. And doing, going on as covers and it like being right here at the front of my consciousness, but being like, you're going to fucking do the show. And I always did. And that's been quite a bolstering thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I when you said blinking, I was like, oh, I've seen Colin blink, but like I never knew that it was something that you were struggling with. I can remember you blinking, but maybe that's now me putting that on it, going, oh yes, I remember seeing that. But everybody blinks, but all of a sudden
all
I'm
the
like,
time.
all the pieces fit together.
And I even like not hesitate, but I feel almost guilty speaking about it, because there's this like internal fear that I have that I'm catching, and that someone else is going to be like, oh no, I've got it. So we were speaking about it at work during the week or last week, and someone was like, oh yeah, no, I never have those thoughts. I was just so laissez-faire, and I think a lot of people just don't.
Yeah, like there is that, because maybe it's like a spectrum thing, but also people I think in a way to like empathize will make links to something that is or isn't there. And then also some people just like to me too, yeah, me and it's like just a natural part of conversation. I think a lot of the time that's quite hard to not do.
Yeah. What I'd really like to do is write something about it. I don't know what form that would take. I've often thought like maybe like some sort of theatre piece would be interesting. I don't know how I would do that, but I was like, there's something here. I think, at least in saying something very personal and being like, I'm just sort of being like, hey, this thing happens to me, it might happen to you as well, and
Yeah, I think the like invisible struggle element is quite an interesting story.
because I don't think anyone would ever, unless I were to do this, and I have done it on occasion. I don't think anyone would know. I don't think anyone would have known today that I was struggling at work,
Yeah.
even though I felt like hell for a lot of the day. So, how do I kind of communicate that into something? I think that could be quite interesting.
I'd like to see what you do with it.
Yeah,
I think that's
and
an interesting struggle.
Like, the ultimate like exorcism of it. To be like, fuck you, I'm going to write a Olivier Award-winning show about it.
When I was younger, and it's a similar thing. Me too.
Yes,
yeah. This is how you improv. I apparently now this was to do with a bereavement in my family that I started to get a really big phobia to wasps, and I also really I can make the links later, but at the time I think I made this link. I love this film called Starship Troopers, and it was like these big like kind of like mechanic
things.
arachnids. Yeah. And that's sort of what this fantasy that developed in my head was going to happen, which was that actually these wasps were sort of going to be massive and come down from the sky, and it was going to be like my job to fight them off, but I was terrified of it. And so it obviously got like, as far as like a phobia to wasps goes, it got quite out of hand.
Yeah.
And but obviously at the time I was like, yeah, but I remember my parents being like, EJ, this isn't real life. And I was like, yeah, but you don't know, I know. So I was convinced. It's really interesting because it's actually I was quite delusional, but I wasn't aware that I was delusional. So I don't even look back at it like I was delusional because it's just a part of my childhood. But I remember eventually they were like, right, you need to go and see a therapist or a psychiatrist or somebody. But it was like local NHS, and it was more the practice of feeling like people thought I was crazy and had to see a specialist. I was like, do you know what? I'm just not going to talk about this again.
Yeah, I get it.
Before you know, I was like, yeah. It was really, but it was one thing in particular. They told me to like draw a wasp on a piece of paper and like burn it, and I was just like, that is so stupid.
Yeah,
I'm not stupid. You know what? I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the intentions were good, but I don't think that's going to do anything. Yeah.
It just felt really patronizing to me, but partly because I was just like, well, that won't work because actually they are going to come down and attack the whole planet.
Yeah. What would have been a more useful thing to have said, I think, would be, yeah, maybe they will. And I know that sounds kind of
I'd have
horrendous.
probably gone on the dark web and bought a gun.
And probably they would have, well, I hope they would have done it, in a more sympathetic way. But the ultimate kind of, I don't want to say weapon because it makes it sound like OCD is a thing to be fought. But like
to let me talk myself through it.
Yeah, and you have to meet it with, yes, that might happen.
Now what?
Because it obviously isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
But the rational brain is not going to be receptive to that. So you have to meet the irrational with, yeah.
Yeah.
I might never stop thinking about my blinking.
Yeah.
Well, should we carry on?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, that's a lot. It's a lot to kind of meet yourself with. But it's I think it's the way through. I would
Yeah.
kind of, when I was in the throes of it, and I still do this sometimes, especially of a morning, I'm like, I've got a lot of stuff to do today, OCD. So you can come along, but you got to keep up because I need to do X, Y, and Z. So
That's
that's
great.
fine, but I really have to get this stuff done. So, book your ideas up and get out the house with me because we've got places to be.
It's really interesting. It's almost like it's almost like you've personified it through like a stoic lens.
Yeah. So the Stoics are a thing that I'm kind of beginning to lean into a bit, with a lot of help from my housemate, who's very much into them and relied on them a lot when he was having a rough time last year. But yeah, there's definitely value in that school of thought.
I found Stoicism so helpful. I'm just looking on my bookshelf to see if my book is there because I can't remember what it's called. There's something like the Ultimate Stoic Challenge or something like that. Maybe by a guy called like William Irvine or something. It was really good, and he basically views it as like challenges by the Stoic gods whenever you have a setback, and he's even got like a way to mark how he does in it. It's like how long it took you to realize it was a setback and realize that you had to solve it, and then how long it took you to find a solution. And it's really like it helped me when we were moving house. Things kept falling through.
Yeah.
But I was always like, okay, those bits are out of our control. Cool, which bits are in our control? Great, let's do those bits.
These things.
There are no more negative thoughts to be had.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that every day.
Oh, it's so hard to do. So hard to do, but incredibly valuable. I think it's Seneca. There's that brilliant quote: "We suffer more in our imagination than we do in reality."
Yeah,
Which is you're like,
and that's part of. I was going to wrap this up at an hour, but and we will soon. But actually, all of a sudden now something else. It's part of why I find acting so hard is because of the uncertainty and which leads to the anxiety.
Okay.
And it leads to me not just enjoying the moment that I'm in.
Yeah.
Because there's so much out of your control in this business that it feels like there are less solutions to work around the setbacks. And in other lines of work, it's like there's always a solution. There's always a way to get that thing. And in acting, it's like, well, you're not tall enough. Your nose is the wrong shape. You're like, oh, I can't work around
That's
that bit.
not fixable. Yeah.
Yeah, and so many things are. And I think that's why a lot of artists in general, but I think that's why a lot of actors suffer with mental health is because just the amount of anxiety around their career. And then there's something called a sunk cost fallacy. But the idea is the more you invest in something, the more you justify your investment in it.
So the stakes are ultimately higher.
Yeah. So if you spend £1,000 on something that doesn't work, you're going to convince yourself that it works.
Well,
like
we'll
it's
get
good.
there.
It's good. Yeah. If you spend £10 on it, you'll go, well, that didn't work. I'll get a new one. And I think that's a lot of what acting is.
Yeah, because it can ask so much of us.
And we give it.
And we do give it. So Jess, who was my first therapist, who was wonderful, she's actually stopped therapizing now. I pushed her to it. She's like, I'm out.
I've told you to stop blinking. Would you?
Yeah. Have you tried putting on a piece of paper and burning it? No, she went into a different field of work, but she's lovely, and we're actually still in touch. Just kind of like life updates. But she said to me, I don't understand how you can, you have such fear, and I do. Like that's such a prominent everyday feeling for me. I think I'm naturally a very anxious person. She's like, how you can put yourself into these scenarios where so much can go wrong, and yet you do it so willingly and with obvious kind of skill. She was like, you're working, like you're doing things. The amount of courage that takes is like, it was quite staggering to her that I was able to do that and yet also have this conflict in myself. And she came to see Play That Goes Wrong. I invited her along. I was on.
Right.
And I was like, if you want to come see, and we didn't like. I was like, what do you say hello to your therapist in person after? Like, she didn't say afterwards, but I spotted her. I was like, there she is. And yeah, she kind of texted me afterwards being like, that was an incredible thing to see. And knowing you from, just Zoom calls and getting into some pretty deep, gnarly stuff, just to see the other side of that was, I think, a really special thing for her. And I was like, oh, great. I'm pleased that you could kind of contextualize me a bit more in terms
Yes.
of. And also, I was playing Crispine at the time, which I thought was the perfect role
Yeah,
to
it
play
is.
in front of your therapist.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
There's a lot going on there. But yeah, she was always very surprised at how, I think, just our willingness to put ourselves in the firing line like that.
Yeah, this is what people. I'm always going. I don't know what you're so afraid of. Objectively, I think I can, I can see it objectively, but I don't have that fear. But maybe it's just the amount of rejection you get. But no, but even when you're not being rejected and you're on stage, I get nervous like half an hour before press night or opening night.
Oh,
And
when your agent's in.
Yeah, I'm a bit nervous then. And then other than that, I'm like, but I don't know. I sort of don't care when things go wrong either. I think maybe because that's the nature of, at least with live theatre, like, yeah, it's going to happen, and that's also going to be really exciting. I just don't care for it at all.
And chances are, not, it's 9 times out of 10, unless it's this big or obvious thing, they're not going to know.
No, I've thrown hoops at people, and it was really clear that it went wrong, and it was just a bit embarrassing. But I was like, "You're in the theatre."
Yeah. What do you expect?
I was injured in a play where like the opening was like circus thing, and I had to do that very basic circus trick, and a few times just threw them. It was just like, whoa, it's the circus.
You know what helped a lot with that for me was understudying on Play That Goes Wrong.
Yes,
because
understudying is a gift.
Hey, you're going to go on and you mightn't have played that part in months. Chances are you're probably going to make a mistake, and that's just fine. Like, you do the work, you keep on top of it, you know what you're doing, but that is not going to be a seamless performance by any means. You are, to an extent, just getting through it. So it kind of taught me tolerance of failure a bit. I was like, oh, it's fine, it's okay. When we do it again, we'll make sure that we don't do that again. And
yeah, I had the same thing.
Yeah, that was very valuable.
Really valuable. I had it when I graduated. I went on to Warhorse, and like the day I played Albert, lead like human in it, I think it was like 3 p.m. when my director rang me up. I'm just like, do you know your Albert lines? And it had been months since we'd rehearsed, and I was like, I will do. And like everyone on stage was really supportive, but God, all the backing tracks had to loop 10 times for me to get through anything. Like,
there was some real penta pauses in that afternoon show. Okay, so I realise that we're waffling, but I've got to just quickly introduce this anecdote. Have you heard the story about the understudy in the mousetrap?
No.
Okay, so this is entered theatrical lore, and I think it is true. But famously, the understudies in the mousetrap certainly didn't go on very frequently, unlike the understudies in Play That Goes Wrong. And again, this may be complete, conjecture, but I think maybe at some point there was a financial reward that if you didn't take a show off as a principal part, you got a little bonus at the end of the year.
Right.
So there was a particular understudy, an older lady who covered 2 of the roles, and had just kind of settled with herself the notion that I'm probably not going to go on That's fine. She spent her days knitting, very sweet old lady. And then one day she gets a knock and they're like, oh, Barbara, we need you on as Mrs. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, okay. Yes. I'm just going to go fetch some. I'm just going to go and fetch some makeup from the car. Yeah, sure, take your time. I just drove away. and did not return to the theatre. And that's kind of become a kind of a nice little response to. So we'll need you on tonight, if that's okay. Great, yeah. I'm just gonna go and get some makeup from the car.
That's good.
Like it's apocryphal. I don't know whether it's true. I really hope it is, but it's such a wonderful little kind of snapshot.
With an older actor, I believe that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like no, I'm not going to do that.
It ain't happening. I don't know it. just hurtling away down the Charing Cross Road.
That's really good. All right, man. That's really good.
Well, this has been lovely.
Yeah. See, if anything, even if like nobody listens to this podcast, it means I get to talk to people regularly that I just wouldn't when I'm at home.
Dreamy.
Great.
Well, thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Yeah, man, that's been good fun.
Cool. All right then. Speaking on.
Right. Yeah, I go through King's Cross when I go to London, so maybe I'll drop you a text one day if you're around.
Yeah. Do.
Right.
You'll find me at the Prince of Wales Theatre for the next 12 months.
Oh yeah, you're not at King's Cross anymore. No, well, maybe I'll see you there.
All right.
All right. Have a good one, man.
Good evening. See you later.